Okay, next for our compositing project, since we added a type layer and modified the type and edited that, let's add an image, because that's the other kind of key component that you'll be adding to a compositional element you'll be adding to your uh, composite images in Photoshop. And I want to show you kind of two different ways of doing things, kind of the difficult way, the more intuitive way in many ways, but then I want to show you the better way. Once you've done it the kind of longer, more intuitive way, the faster way will make a lot of sense. All right, so first, let's open up an image that we'd like to add to this Alaska light. So let's come underneath our file menu and go open, Command or Control O to bring up this dialog box, and we're going to add this fishing boat image, and then click open. And you can go back to the home menu if you would like to and do it that way. All right, and then let's just make this a little bit smaller. Command minus minus. Remember, now we're paying those big benefits, right, of setting up those preferences so that the image the window gets resized along with the image. All right, so kind of to describe what's going on here in terms of Photoshop and layers. Notice we bring up the fishing boat image. Here's the layers panel for that. All right, and there's the background image, the boat. Notice if we click on the Alaska light image, the layers for that come up. All right, so as you select one image to another, the layer panel changes because you're reading different files. What we're going to do here, kind of the manual way to show you, is I'm just going to take this background layer and I'm just going to drag it over here. I could also do a copy and paste. I could select all and do a copy and paste. You'll end up with the same thing basically. And I'm going to drag this over here and just kind of place it near the middle of the image. All right. Now notice that this comes in and a new layer is automatically created, right? So the first thing I'm going to do, is call this, the boat image. All right. And you want to get in the habit of naming all your layers logically, no doubt about it. Now, we've talked about non-destructive editing. If I now start editing this image dimensionally, like changing the dimension, the size, the rotation, it's going to be working with the pixels that I've got and the image starts to degrade. Here's where the concept of using smart layers comes in. If I convert this boat layer to a smart layer by doing this, come down here and convert to smart object, you get that little icon right there. And what happens is it links this image here in the Alaska light image to the original image that I just brought it over from. And then any dimensional adjustments that I make here will automatically Photoshop will go back to the original file, retrieve the original pixels to help do any dimensional adjustments. All right. And that way you maintain as much quality as possible. So you can resize, reshape as much as you want to your heart's delight, but you'll get no reduction in image quality. All right, let's move our layers panel over here a little bit because I'm going to just make this a little bit larger as you see here. All right. And I want to click on this and I want to do a select all. All right. All right. So you can see there's the edge of the image and I'm just moving my visibility out to the edge here, Command D. I'm increasing the visibility past the edge of the image, all right, to deselect. Now I've moved this image in here and I've created a smart object. This is when we can do this. We can come down here and choose Free Transform, Command T or Control T, all right. And when you do that, what's pointed out is something you really didn't immediately recognizes, oh, this placed image that we brought in is larger than the receiving image. And you didn't really see that because it was a smart object until you actually went to the transform tool. And we're going to the transform tool because we're working with a smart object, and transform tools work very well there. So what we might do here then is click and drag, all right, and retransform this image so that it all fits right inside the Alaska light. I can make it larger, smaller, whatever I want to do. All right, but because it's a smart object, it's going to be pulling pixels from this original image. And then I can click OK. All right. So now you see what we've done. We brought an image, we linked it back to the original image, we did a transform, we resized it. All right. So it's a bit of a complicated process, right? So what I'd like to do is show you the easy way to do this. And we've already set it up in the preferences that we set earlier. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Option or Alt click on the trash can, which allows me to just throw that layer away. All right. And I'm going to keep this image just for reference. And instead of opening the image and going to the layers panel and dragging it across, I'm going to activate this image here, the Alaska Light, make sure that one's the one that's active. And you can tell by looking at the layers panel, right? And I'm going to come underneath File, and I'm going to do one of the two places. Remember the preference we set? We said that if we bring in a place file, two things. One, it'll automatically create a smart object, and two, it'll automatically allow us to resize the image once we place it. Both of those things we set in preferences, all right? And we have an option here. When we place it, it can link it back to the original file, or we can just embed a copy of this file in the working file. This is almost always my choice. That way, no matter where I move this file, the embedded copy is already. Does it make my file size larger? Yeah. Do I care? No. All right, because every one of my, I'll end up with some pretty big files, but it's okay. But it's a choice. It's not a right or a wrong way to do it. I just choose to use it because I move my files around a fair amount during my workflow. So I'm going to choose Place Embedded, and then I'm going to choose that fishing boat image, the same one, and choose Place, and watch what happens. Do you see that? It automatically brings the file in, transforms it so that it fits, the width fits inside of the Alaska Light image. All right? So I don't have to go through all that. Now notice that there's the layer right there, right? And it actually adds the name of the file, Fishing Boat Sunrise, to that layer, so it automatically names it. Now watch this. When I hit my Enter key to apply the transform, boom, you can see that it's automatically a smart layer. That's the way to bring files into Photoshop, all right? But it was all controlled through that preference that we set up earlier, where we set the preference to automatically resize, which transforms the file automatically and creates a smart layer all at the same time. So I showed you the long way so you could see conceptually what's happening, but really you want to use the place command. That's the most powerful and the most time-saving. Okay, now that we've brought our second image in, and I showed you how to use the place command, and that's really the best way to go because everything happens more automatically. Automatically scales that image through a transform and creates a smart layer and names the layer for me. Ta-da! Now, let's say that we want to edit this. All right, and our objective here is to get these two images to blend together and be part of one another. All right, so we've placed the boat. And now we want to kind of position the boat. And the way to do this is you can just hold down, the Command or Control key and bring up the Move tool, and that allows you to move the image anywhere you want to. Notice that if I don't go to the Move tool, and actually select the Move tool, it gives me the ability to move the object around, all right? But if I just want to move it horizontally or vertically, I can actually go to the Move tool, press the V key, which selects the Move tool over here. If I hold down my Shift key, I can only move it horizontally or vertically, all right? The good thing is with these smart guides that are built into Photoshop now is that if you just go to the Move tool just using the Command key, right? It'll automatically stay within those smart guides unless you actively push it outside of it, which is very nice. Okay, so I'm just going to move my object down here, the boat down a little bit, because I'm thinking I want this in the lower portion of the image. All right, there we go. So I'm going to place it. Again, everything is completely non-destructive here. It's a smart layer. If I dimensionally resize this again, I'm still good to go. All right, so what I would like to do is I'd like to control the visibility and blending of this file. And normally in the first lesson that you're going to work with in Photoshop, you can talk about using selection tools, basic selection tools. So that's what we'll start with here. I'm going to go to the marquee tool here, which is over here. It's the rectangular marquee tool. There's multiple marquee tools here. We'll just start with the rectangular marquee tool. And let's go up here into our options panel. Remember, whatever tool you select here, you get the options here. It has a feather of 0. Now, you may want to actually assign a feather here or not. Typically, I just start with 0 and then I'll control the feather later. And that's what I'm going to do here because I want to show you how the feather works. And I'm thinking, I don't want all of this sky here. I want some of it because there's a nice gradient here, which is going to help this image blend in with this one. But I don't need this top section here, so I want to get rid of it. And I might want to get rid of some of the bottom of this file as well. So I'm just going to take my marquee tool, right? And I'm just going to draw it about where I want it to go. Because I don't want all the bottom, I don't want all the top, all right? And if you don't like what you've got, you can just start over, right? You can say, I really want a little bit less and a little bit, or a little bit more, or whatever you want, all right? However that's going to fit in. All right, so I've started with a basic marquee tool. Now, when you learn basic tools, you say, well, I want to get rid of the rest of the image, so I might invert it and then delete. Don't do it. Don't do it. After you come up with a basic selection, you want to convert that selection into something called a mask. In this case, we're going to make a layer mask. Because it's non-destructive editing. Anytime you make a selection, you hit the delete key to remove pixels, boom, that's destructive editing. And you don't need to do that. All right. So you start with a basic selection tool, in this case, a very basic tool, just the marquee tool. And then we're going to convert this selection into a mask. Right? And to do this, as you progress and get a little bit more sophisticated in making masks, you'll probably use this function here, the select and mask, which brings up a very powerful set of selection and mask tools, right? But for today, I'm going to show you how to access that, but for today, we're going to start simply. And again, where are we going? Our layers panel, of course, because we can create a mask by just clicking on this function right here. See this little icon? If you let your your mouse hover over there, it'll say add layer mask. Right? Now watch what happens when I click here. Remember, we started with just a basic selection. Then the first thing we do after that basic selection is we create a mask. All right? And notice what gets added to the layers panel here and linked to the image. And notice that the upper portion of this image is no longer visible. That's because the white area here is the visible area and the black area is the invisible. All right. Now, notice we can actually take a look at this mask. I'm going to hold down my Alt key, Option in Mac, and click on it, and we'll actually see the layer mask in our main view window here. Notice the hard edge that we've got here. All right. That's because we started with a feather of 0. So we have a hard edge on our layer mask. This is visible, that's invisible. Think of this as a digital stencil, if you will, where this is the cutout area and that's the opaque area. And that's basically what a layer mask is. All right. Now, I can edit this edge manually, or I can come down here. Lo and behold, we've clicked on our layer mask, and look what we see. Control for properties for the layer mask. Well, look at that. All right. Now, nice thing here is I can still edit the layer mask while looking at my image. All right. I can still look at the layer mask and edit the layer mask by looking at my image, by clicking on the image, activating the image view, and then just clicking over here again on the layer mask. Remember, I held down my Option key, Alt, and when I clicked on here to actually bring up the layer mask in this view. So if you activate the layer view and then just click on your layer mask, then you have layer mask properties here. And then you can control the density, the overall density or opacity of the image, of the layer mask, through the image through the layer mask, or let's just do something simple. Let's control the feather. Remember, we did a 0 feather up here, so we'd start out with a hard edge. Now watch what happens to this edge as I pull my feather over. And see how that edge feathers right up like there? See how I'm controlling the feather of that edge? And watch this. I'm going to go back, Alter, Option to click on, and you can see what happens to the layer mask. All right, and that's how it's controlling the blending of that edge. All right, and then let's just go back over here, and then just click on the layer mask to edit the layer mask, and then I have complete control over what that looks like. All right, so I can go up here, go all the way to about 35 to get a nice smooth gradient edge of that layer mask. I haven't removed one pixel from here. All the original pixels are there. I'm just controlling the feathering. Notice that I can go to the Selecting Mask tool by clicking right here, and it brings up a whole set of tools that you can use for creating and editing your layer mask. I'm just showing you the fundamentals here so you get the idea of what a layer mask is. This is non-destructive control of visibility and blending using a layer mask to do that. And at any point, you can use your layers panel to create the mask here, and then go to Select and Mask, or you can go to Select and Mask underneath the Select menu. Whatever method you want to use, and then control that layer mask, the basic functions through density and feather right here in the Properties panel, or go into the full set of controls by going into the Select and Mask. All right, so there we go. And remember, at any point here, all right, at any point, I can decide, now that I've controlled the feathering a little bit, I'd like to move the image down even maybe a little bit more. I just go to my Command key, or activate the Move tool here, right? hold down the shift key so it just moves horizontally, so I can control the placement at any time. The layer mask moves with it because it's linked. All right. So very cool, non-destructive editing throughout. Everything that we've done so far is non-destructive editing. All right, so the image is starting to blend a little bit. This image still looks pretty separate from this one up here, though, right? The color balance is different. The contrast is different. So let's do something about that. Let's go back up here. I'm going to select my image layer. All right. And then let's go to, and I liked that soft light before. And notice that the color dodge way too saturated. Let's go to the soft light and see if that helps. Boy, it sure does, right? This helps blend that image. We're letting some of the background show through. And so they're really creating a nice overall blending of this image with the background. And just like we did with our type, if I want to reduce the opacity some as well, I can go down here and go maybe about 85%, all right, for my opacity. All right, so I can blend it, adjust the opacity. Now I'm starting to get a really nice blended version of my image. Once again, at any point, I can come back here, right, and I can control the placement of my fishing boat. And as I increase the amount of blending that I have here, I'm probably going to want to fine tune exactly where that placement is. Anything else I can do? You betcha. And I want to show you one more fundamental image editing tool that's non-destructive, and they're called adjustment layers, and specifically adjustment layers applied as clipping masks. All right. But before we do this, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take my type layer and I'm just going to drag it up here. So you can change the stacking order of your layers by just clicking and dragging. I typically like to have my type up top unless I actually want it to occur behind an image, and that just keeps the layer stacking clean. In case if I move this element up here, it'll be underneath the type rather than on top of it. But if I want the type to occur behind it, I can by just adjusting the layer stacking. All right. And as we go along, of course, you always want to do a save, right? Command S or Control S to save the image as we go along. And after every function, you'll probably want to do that. Otherwise, everything just occurs in RAM. All right, one other thing that we want to do here, and that is let's do some adjustment layers to fine tune the overall look and feel of this image layer here. So I'm going to select my boat layer. And again, I don't have to go to my my layer menu to go to my adjustment layers. I just click here, and first adjustment layer I'm going to make is a curves adjustment layer. All right, and I'm going to use this to control overall brightness. So I'm actually going to select that. I'm going to call this the B and C for brightness and contrast, because I'm just going to work with the master channel here. I can use this for color correction if I want to by adjusting red, green, and blue channels. But here I'm just going to do an overall brightness and contrast adjustment. And I want to brighten this a little bit to kind of match some of the brightness up here. So I add this adjustment layer, but notice that if I just add the adjustment layer and I lighten and darken, do you see how it does both images, both the background image and the boat image, the Alaska Light image and the boat image? I don't want that. I just want to lighten this image. This is where the clipping mask comes in. Select my adjustment layer, the B and C, brightness and contrast, and come down here and create clipping mask. Notice there's a keyboard shortcut. You're going to learn it, all right? The Command Option G for clipping mask, and it moves the adjustment layer off to the right. All right. Now watch what happens as I lighten and darken the image. It just applies it to the boat image. All right. So you've learned the two key tools that we're going to be using in this course to create composite images. One, layer mask for controlling visibility and blending non-destructively, and then clipping mask controlled adjustment layers, which are adjustment layers offset to the right in the layers panel that allow you to control the tone and color of each layer independently and separately from all the rest. All right. So here, what I would like to do is kind of overall lighten the layer just a little bit. Okay? I do it visually to suit. But you know, the saturation of this layer is still a little bit high based upon the reduced saturation of this layer. So now I could work with the colors, but there's a real simple tool here to use to adjust saturation. Let's make another adjustment layer here and come down here and choose the hue saturation layer. And notice that since the first layer is applied as a clipping mask, when I choose hue saturation, it's automatically applied as a clipping mask as well. And then I'll just come down here to the saturation And I'm just going to diminish. See, if I raise the saturation, the image looks more separate. As I lower the saturation a little bit, it fits in a little bit better with the overall undersaturated look, undersaturated image up here. So here I've controlled the brightness and I've controlled the saturation. And if at any point I decide, oh, I'd like to maybe fine tune, the opacity, maybe I bring the opacity up just a little bit. Not much, just a few points. I can fine tune. Any of these adjustments are absolutely, completely editable. We haven't done one thing that is destructive editing. Everything is non-destructive editing. And there we go. We've created our first composite using type, adding an image, controlling the visibility and blending with our layer mask, and then our tone and color with clipping mask controlled adjustment layers.